What's going on, family?
Hi
Hello,
everyone.
hello, 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 and welcome to, of course, Marriage Chronicles. We're here. Guys, we were out of it last week. There was a lot going on in regards to our society. We just thought,
It
let's
just
be,
wasn't right,
it wasn't
really.
right to really do it.
Mm,
We just thought, let's be a bit sensitive to what's happening in our environment, within our nations, around the world. But look here, we're here. We're back. Of course, we're in the month of June, and we're giving God thanks. We're still in love. You in love with me? I'm in,
yeah.
I'm in love with you. We're still in
Yeah.
love with one another. And I think that's the most important part of it all. So look here, I want you to go ahead and do what you know how to do and you do it best. I want you to go ahead and like this, share this, comment, tell somebody to tell somebody else that we're on, because we're discussing some things on today that we just need to have a conversation.
Yeah. We're just gonna
Really.
I think we're talking about today a few things to do with communication, things that can affect your communication as a married couple. And our topic today is why being right in marriage is wrong.
Mm, yeah. Yeah.
Why being right
That's
in
right. That's
marriage
right.
is
That's right.
wrong. And I think we can both testify to that and say that, you know what, we've all had times where we thought we're right and it's actually,
And it's a good feeling to
yeah.
sometimes be right, if I may
Oh,
say.
baby,
You know what I
glittering.
mean? Am I glittering?
Yeah,
The
come on.
sun,
You got glitter.
I got glitter out here.
There you
See?
go.
Yeah. Thank you.
It's all right.
No, but it's if it's a good feeling to be right, because by nature, we want to be validated. We want to feel good. We want to make sure that, what, we're getting our views across. We're getting what we're saying, what's taking place, when it comes to, of course, being in marriage. We were taught with, just being young, you need to get your point across and be right. But in marriage, it doesn't always work that
No,
way
no.
in marriage. And what we've realized that sometimes being right could be wrong.
So listen.
Did you just see a lizard? See, my lovely wife wants to, of course, be in this whole environment, outside. But when we see the lizards and stuff like, hey, I saw a big iguana today, a huge iguana. The iguana was like this big, and it was absolutely incredible.
If you know anything about me, I don't like anything that moves. That's not, if it's human, I can cope with that. But anything else, spider, anything, even ants, I don't even like them. I don't like anything that moves. So I've just saw that lizard. I'm telling you now, everyone, if the lizard comes near me, I'm off. So I'm just letting you know he's finishing this off all by himself.
Hey, she's going to leave me with a lizard. But look here, nah, lizard's not going to bother anyone.
No.
But look here, let's get right to it, because I think it's absolutely important that we have this discussion on today, because I think a lot of marriages are in a place. I know we were in a place, and I know especially when we first got married. I came in and they're like, I'm the man. You know what I
Yeah.
mean, and that type of stuff, and it didn't really go down too well. Trying to boost up and big up my ego as a man within the marriage, because the reality of it is I did that because that's the way I was taught as a man, to come in there and shine and show yourself and all that type of stuff. And that's not really the best direction to take it. That this has to go this way and this has to operate
Yeah.
like that, and
Yeah.
and that didn't really work too well especially with my wife, especially growing up with a single mother, where her whole life was defined by being this strong, independent woman, where what I mean, you don't take no mess, you don't take nothing, you just get things done. And so we already had a conflict of interest. I was coming in like the man, and she was already coming in like the woman.
Yeah, my mum was very, very strong, and my dad was part of my life for a while. But majority, I think more my teenage years, it was my mum raised us, and my mum was very strong, very confident lady, and very vocal. And she taught me to be vocal and to kind of stand up for you, and not kind of to stand up for yourself. So I thought, well, imagine we've got two strong characters, because if anybody knows us, we're both very, very, very strong characters.
Right.
So when he's trying to make his stamp to me, well, naturally, I've got my back up, and we're ready to roll, really, aren't we? And we'll go back and forth for a good couple of hours. Strong conversation,
Strong-willed individuals.
yeah, strong conversations, and we realized over time that didn't help us. It didn't help our marriage. In fact, every time I chipped at him, I was chipping at our foundation of a marriage,
Yeah.
and it started to pull us down, really. And it just had a real negative effect, didn't it?
It had a negative effect because one of the things I realized is that, being in marriage, you cannot be at a place where you think to yourself, I want to build this great marriage and I want to build this great woman. I want to build this great individual. But while we're trying to build each other, we're still have something in the back of our mind that I need to be right in this.
Yeah.
Especially
Yeah.
when we're I call them passionate discussions, but
Yeah.
some of you all may call it arguments. You know what I mean? But when we're having these passionate discussions and we're at a place and position, where we're trying to bring something across, we're what I would call being very strong-minded in that moment, because nobody wants to be wrong. That's the reality of it. And I
So
think that's
true.
so important. Nobody wants to feel as though they're losing a war or they're losing a battle. Sometimes, we will stand our ground and be so
Yep.
prideful and be in a place and position where we believe to ourselves, no, this has got to go this way. And even though we know it don't have to go that way,
Yeah.
because this is how we were taught. And the thing, we were having this discussion this week on a Facebook Live with one of the pastors we know in England. And one of the things we've had to do is we've had to create our own culture.
Yes. That's so
How
important.
would you say that?
Yeah, because we shared this before with you all, and one of the things that we were saying was that when we first got married, we would argue about certain things that were a challenge. So we argued for butter. There was a big old standoff in the middle of Asda, which is your version of Walmart for those who are in the States. And we were arguing over which butter to have because his mum liked a certain brand and my mum had a certain brand. And, I said to him in the end, my debate and argument was, we're going to buy the butter that I like, because I'm the one who's going to be doing majority of the cooking. So I'm cooking, you're not, we're having this butter. So anyway, we realized that we had to kind of back down. And, even though our culture is very important, and traditions, and many of us like to hold on to those traditions, but the problem with that is that we bring it into our family, and there's no way that we should allow culture or traditions to steer the course of our marriage. In fact, we have to then find a culture for our marriage. What works well for Ryan and Jamie,
Right.
and Jeremiah, because we
That's
have
good.
Jeremiah? What works well for your family? And that's what you have to take time to find out, because there are some cultures, some cultural things and traditional things that you probably have to leave aside because it doesn't fit your marriage. And especially when you've got interracial, is that the right word?
Interracial relationships.
Relationships. Sometimes culture plays a massive part, and it's not that you're neglecting your culture when you go into a relationship like that, but what you're actually doing is finding what fits you and your spouse, or you and your partner, before you get married.
And I think that's absolutely important in regards to it. Let me ask you a question. I think this is good because how did you, because I can only ask you this first time, kind of ask you, how did you deal with me when it came to the point from a woman's perspective? How did you deal with me in the beginning of our marriage? And now that we're about 17 years in, how do you deal with me now?
Okay, so
when it comes to being right.
I was very impatient, very argumentative.
And this is the beginning years.
Yeah, had
Okay.
a lot to say. I wasn't going to let him win the argument because I see that as defeat. So I'll keep going. I'll go back and forth all night. That was the type of person that I was. And he was the same. So, don't look at him as though he's innocent in all of
I'm
this.
innocent, guys.
He would give the same. As much as he got, he gave it. And, it just became quite toxic, really, when we started to behave like that. Because we felt that, you always feel like it's like a loss to yourself, especially when you're right and you're trying to convince the other person. I think that's challenging. But the one thing I really love about Ryan is that he has always been the type of person that likes to learn. If I tell him something about himself, he will listen. He will take on board, what I've said. Won't necessarily change straight away, but you'll start to see the changes, and he will really try and make an effort to change, and that's workable. that is seriously workable. I think if he wasn't like that, and we're both like that, to be honest with you, if we weren't like that, it would have been very, very challenging days.
So do you find it a whole lot more easier?
Oh, now, yeah. Well, now there's sometimes I just don't even bother arguing back. Like if he says something and I don't agree or he's wrong, I'm just like, okay, babe, anything you say, babe. And I've got a big smile on my face because it's just not worth it. And I've learned over time, and I'm sure the mature folks, if you're listening, please, and if you agree with me, because you guys will have more experience than myself and Ryan, but over time, you just learn to let things go, and you just learn to say, you know what, it's just not worth it. And it's in life, it's not every fire that you experience or you see, you put it out, because some fires will die out by themselves. It's the big ones then that you've got to work on, but the little fires, don't need to put them out.
I think that's key, because when I first got married, for those of you who don't know, my wife is very, very, very strong, and she's a strong-minded individual, and that's the part I love about her. But when we were going through moments of differences, and I'm telling you something, it used to be very challenging for me to encounter this strong-minded woman that knew what she wanted, and even if she knew she was wrong at something, she made sure she was gonna make it look like she was right. I've had my
he's
moments as
describing
well.
himself.
No, I think we both
He's
had.
not describing me. He's describing. Very funny.
But
He's describing himself.
No.
That's you.
No. I think it's a little bit of us both.
Okay.
Yeah. See, I don't like to just say one.
Okay.
I like to say both.
Okay.
But literally, one of the things I found out is me, myself, and I. I was always at a place where I'm right at this. This is what's going to happen this way. I believe this is the right way to go. And by nature, because I have this thing about me as a leader, in my leadership capacity, in my business, in ministry, or whatever like that, sometimes the greatest thing I've learned is don't take that home. You get what I'm saying? Because at home, there's a different boss. You know what I mean? And she's a great boss at that, and she keeps me in place and in position and helps me to grow and to take things to the next level of where I need it to be. But I've had to learn that when I got in her presence, that some things that I deemed as being right, even when my wife thought that I was wrong, I had to learn to say, God, I'm going to leave this to you. And I think that's a huge thing in marriage, that you've got to get to a point, even when you know or you think you are right, in regards to a circumstance or a situation, that you have to sometimes leave it, or even to the point walk away from the situation. Because one of the things I found out, that always being right, and I'm going to say this really well, you need to hear this, for those of you in a relationship or marriage or anything to that degree, always being right can sometimes, and if not always, get you the quickest way to get you a divorce. Because you're so adamant in being right, you don't realize that you're hurting people. You're hurting your partner in the process, because they may be wrong at the situation, but you pushing that I'm right in their face is not going to make the situation any better. It's not going to turn it around. It's not going to take your marriage to the next level. Sometimes just eating a little bit of humble pie, knowing that you may be correct in a situation, but that person has not gained the revelation that you have absolutely gained, maybe about a certain subject topic. Would you agree?
Yeah, 100%.
You know what I mean? So I think it's very, very important for us to be able to understand that we need not to be so concerned with the simple fact, I'm right, this is the way it's supposed to go, this is the direction we're supposed to take it. Don't get me wrong. I know I'm the man of the house, but my wife has already realized that we don't, as men, don't need to push it in her face that we are the man of the house. She can clearly see that we are of a different gender. And by understanding that, she understands the responsibilities and the pressures that we carry. We don't need to, and especially me, I don't need to be in a place where I'm overriding my wife continuously, making her feel inferior to me. We're not meant to be inferior or superior in marriage.
Mm.
We're meant to be able to walk together with one another, side by side, doing life together.
Yeah.
And where I get it wrong, it's instantly, and it's important for me to recognize that and to tell my wife, you know what, I've got it wrong. It took me about 12, almost 12 years to actually admit that.
Not that long.
Maybe
No,
not that long,
it wasn't
but
that
it took
long.
me some time to realize,
Yeah.
a few years to realize that, look here, it's okay to tell your partner that, look here, I was wrong. You know what I mean? There's some things that and decisions that I made in the past where I was adamant that it should go in this direction. And the thing that I realized is that I had a conversation, of course, with my wife, even in recent times, saying, you know what, that thing you told me a good while ago, you were absolutely correct
Yeah.
in regards to it. And I think when I said that, and maybe my wife can really confirm that, she felt for one of the first times that I was validating her opinion, her
Yeah, I
suggestion.
felt like you were listening.
Yeah.
Because sometimes when you put things across, you can feel as though your spouse is not listening. So it's really always important that you acknowledge, and it's
Yeah.
not a sign of weakness at all. But why not? Why can't it be a sign of weakness? Because we are supposed to be vulnerable to the person that we're married to. So I just I just thought it was amazing when he would say, Jay, you're right. Inside, I'm like, yes, I knew I was right. I knew I was right the whole time. Like a whole big thing, like, yes, I knew I was right. But obviously I'm listening. I'm like, yeah, okay, babe, thanks for coming and letting me know. And it was that's how
You're
I was.
having a good time.
Yeah, inside, I'm like, yeah, I knew it was right. But it's just nice, when a person comes, and when they come to you and they're humble enough to say, you're right. Don't throw it back in their face, and don't try to resurrect another argument or another situation. Actually, just meet them where they're at in terms of their humility, and talk back to them and see how then you can find a resolution. Because the problem why you're probably going back and forth is because there is no solution in place. And I think that's really important. The end goal in any discussion is to find a solution where both parties win. That is really the end goal, isn't it?
And I think that's key. What you just said about both parties winning. You know what I mean? Because sometimes when you're so concerned about being right, it's always, when it's about right and wrong, it's about winning and losing.
Yeah.
It's about really bringing that other person in the place to understand there's no loser in this.
Yeah.
And if there is loss, we all lose together.
We're all a team.
We're a team.
We are a team.
Yeah.
And, the biggest thing is that there is no I in your marriage. There should be no I in your conversations. And it's really important that you actually be mindful and actually listen to yourself when you talk. For example, examples of arguments that you could probably hear, like, I made this house, or I brought this house, or I bring in the money, or I blah, 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 blah. And it brings a separation, because it's saying that actually, well, you did this all by yourself. But let's be real, like, you wouldn't have been able to do it if probably your wife was at home with the kids, or you wouldn't have been able to do it if your husband wasn't supporting you and encouraging you. It's about a we, because if you bring everybody together in on this, the team wins. And then it feels more like a team spirit when you guys are working together for your common goals and for the things that you want to achieve as a family. So I really think I would encourage you. One of my tips I would definitely say to you today is evaluate the way you speak and the words you use, and especially if they're not team player words, you need to change it around where they become team player words. Take away the I. It's now we, us, our. Make it like that. And even if it does mean that, for example, one person in the relationship is earning more money than the other person, I think that's a key thing to kind of talk about. Because that can happen a lot in relationships where one person is the main breadwinner while the other person's at home. And the thing is that we cannot devalue the other person who is not bringing in money as the other person is, because it's so important that you don't do that. Let me tell you why. I've seen so many clips, and I saw an amazing clip online which actually helped to describe this, because when a man leaves the house or a woman leaves the house to go to work, and the other person's still at home. Sometimes people have the image that they're sitting at home all day. In fact, you kind of had that image at one point, didn't you?
I think we both had that image.
Yeah,
one
yeah,
another.
yeah. We did it all. We had that where we didn't really appreciate what each other was doing. So, for example, when I was at home, when I just had my son, my husband would go out to work and he would go and do his bits for church and so forth. And then when I came back home, imagine in the whole of the day, I'm doing all these sort of stuff. I'm cleaning, washing, I'm ironing, I'm cooking dinner, I'm everything, entertaining my son, making sure he's active and doing all sorts. And then he'll come home and, you know, half an hour before he came home, the house was tidy. And then as soon as he comes home, the house is a bomb. And it just seems as though I've done nothing and been sitting down all day. And it's about evaluating and saying, okay, you know what? No, we need to stop seeing it like that. Just because I don't see what's been happening doesn't mean nothing is happening, because we all work hard to build and maintain what we're living in, and what the things that we kind of do as a home, really, and as a family. It's the same with him. You know, I didn't appreciate, because his first trade is graphics, and honestly, I'd say to him, like, babe, why does it take you so long to do one design? Now, for me, I had no appreciation for what he was doing, because I just thought that graphic design was a bit of clip art.
Turn on the computer.
Yeah, turn on the computer, a bit of clip art. Do you remember clip art? So, you know, you just copy and paste and you get your image that you want, add a bit of colour on there. That's what I thought. I didn't realise the time it took to kind of to do it, did I?
Yeah, let me tell you, it's about, I think, never undermining the person who you're with and believing they're not in a place, and appreciating what they have. And, you know, this is where the right or wrong mentality is not always verbally out of your mouth. Sometimes it's your thought process of what you think is right and what you think is wrong in a relationship. And when you have that mindset that you think something is right, when you look on your partner or the one who you're married or in love with, you think, if I'm right, everything that they do is wrong. And this is what is causing this is what's causing our society to be well over 50% of divorces, simply because they have this new terminology, what I would call irreconcilable differences. Of course, it's not new, of course, but it's been in the courtrooms for quite some time that people get divorced for an irreconcilable difference. Meaning, in other words, I haven't agreed with you for a very long time, and we can't agree that I'm right in the situation and you're wrong. And that's what to me you've got to understand irreconcilable differences mean. You've been wrong all the time, I've been right, and we can't see the eye to eye. But the reality of it, we got into this to say, for sickness through health, for better or for worse, you know what I mean, till death do us part. That means there are going to be some irreconcilable differences. There are going to be some moments that we are right. There are going to be some there are going to be some moments that we are wrong. There's going to be some moments that you know, we're going up and maybe we're going not in the direction we want to. But it's about beginning to understand and realize that I'm not ever going to be right unless you're right too. You know, and I think that's very important for us to be able to understand that when you're in a relationship, you are not right until your other partner is right. And in the sense to say until, and them being right, meaning you both have sat down, come together, built the building blocks together of marriage, and made sure that what you thought was right was only right because of how you grew up.
That's so true.
Because of your own culture, because of your own, because of how you dealt with things in your own family home. You saw that as always being right. You know what? We have dinner this time. This is the time we have dinner. You know, I've always had dinner around, 5:30 with my family. We sat at the dinner table. Well, my family grew up where when we had dinner time, we sat on the couch. So what is going to be, our new culture? Because within your mindset, you're right. And within my mindset, I'm right. So there's a difference of opinions right already. And so we need to be able to figure out what are we going to define in our marriage
Yeah.
as being right. Therefore, it won't be a I'm right on my side, you're wrong on your side, or
Hmm.
you're right on your side, I'm wrong. But it will come from the perspective and place where we both can make this happen and work. What you think?
Yeah, definitely. And I think what would be absolutely phenomenal if you guys can do this to all the married couples out there. This is your homework for this week. I want you to sit down and write down what are your core values for your family. That's so important because once you identify the core values for
Yeah,
your
yeah,
family, you know what you're working towards. You have a mandate that this is what we have for our home. This is what we stand for. So we have our core values, and we make sure one of our core values is that, listen, you at least have to try something once. So that's been phenomenal. And Jeremiah doesn't like that core value sometimes because he has to at least try it once. If you've tried it once and you can say, okay, you know what, you've tried it, you've been there, you've done that. So yeah, core values.
I think
Get
it's
your core
absolutely right.
values together, write them down, sit down, have family meetings. That's so important for us. It creates a safe space where you guys can all sit down as a couple and as a family, and you can talk about some of the issues, some of the problems that you may have. And there's times where you and your spouse have to have your own little family meeting to deal with some of the things that you are going through. But you also need to have family meetings that the children are incorporated, or everybody who lives in your home are incorporated. And that's a time where you can sit down and establish the ground rules for
Yes,
the family, because that's
absolutely.
so important. Your ground rules for the family so that everybody knows. And then you come back, and if you find out that the rules are not being followed, you come back to another meeting. You say, okay, well, the rules are not being followed. We've established these rules. Everybody's signed, because that's another thing. Sign to the agreement. So write your rules down, stick them on the fridge, and everybody write to say, okay, I agree that I'm going to carry out, because it gives then everybody a sense of responsibility that they're in and they're buying into this process in terms of setting some ground rules for the home. And if you find that it's not working, you come back and you reevaluate, and you reevaluate to the point where you look and say, okay, well, are the rules we put in place, are they practical?
Yeah,
Are they feasible for our family? Are they manageable? Can they be done? And if they're not, you reevaluate where you can not bend the rules, but you can readjust the rules or
absolutely,
readjust the
absolutely.
parameters around some of the rules that you've placed for the family.
I absolutely agree. Creating these engagements of rules and things and borders, I should say. What I mean, will I think it's so important in order to help us as a couple to make some things happen. But
Yeah.
look here, guys, we came on here today just to really kind of just talk to you just on the simple fact of why being right in marriage is wrong. And as you can see, we are two different individuals.
Yeah, we
You
are.
know what I mean? And we're colliding our worlds together of what we've learned as a foundation for our lives when we were single, came together in marriage, only to not express ourselves on one side as being right, because the reality of it, the situation, there shouldn't be a side that's right, because by right, two should be one. So when one is wrong, guess what? We all gonna go through the wrong. When
Yeah.
one is right, we all are gonna go through the right.
Yeah.
We all are gonna become and make ourselves be the individuals that we need to be in order to become better. Because I'm constantly want to be in a place and position that we make ourselves and find ways to be better as a couple. I mean, I'm gonna say this before we even go. I mean, I remember for years I was asking my wife, "Look here, let's do business together." My wife didn't want to do business together.
That's
That
not
well,
true.
it's the let me tell my side of the story. All right, she didn't want to really do business with me because probably because, and I'll get her to talk. Probably because my wife's very career driven, and she wants to see certain things in certain directions, and I can appreciate that about her. That's what makes her an excellent wife and a mother. Her go getting attitude. But I was looking for this duo to walk into business, and I say this because all them years I didn't see it, but we're in a season now. COVID has hit, and we're walking into business like crazy. And sometimes one of the things I realize is that when certain things don't happen in the time frame you want it to, you don't have to start using that word. You're wrong. You should be doing this. You should be doing. We're not here to gauge and to be the Holy Ghost for somebody.
Yeah.
We're here to walk with them, not tell them what to do. Not, and if they don't necessarily want to do it, leave it. There were times that I just had to leave things. I left it. All of a sudden, we're both thrown into business. I didn't even have to ask her, let's go into business, or she didn't even have to ask me. It's just the circumstances just threw us into business together. And it's been one amazing journey. And I'm telling some of you this for a reason, that some of you who've been pressing and praying and believing for God to do something for your partner, or bring them to in a certain direction, sometimes leave it and just pray. And there's been areas in my wife's life that she's looked on me and wondered, when is this brother going to change? When is he going to get into the place that he needs to be? When is he going to take it to the next level? And there's certain things over time that my wife's prayers, she has seen them evolve in me. And can I tell you something? If you're ever going to pray, always pray with your partner or your wife or your husband out loud. Because your prayer is not only a prayer to God, but your prayer is for your partner to be edified and to hear what's going on in your heart. Because prayer is a huge thing that lets even the world know what's on your heart, because prayer is an intimate moment between you and God.
Yeah.
And it's about being at a place and position where there are prayers that my wife had prayed, I heard, and I changed it, just because prayer changes things. Just that simple fact of me hearing, and vice versa with her. And so you look here, why being right in marriage is wrong is simply because there is no winner if there's a loser.
That's so true. And I mean, to add to what you said, initially what sometimes some couples will find is that you both come into your marriage with different dreams and visions. Right. So he always had a dream and vision of business, and I had my dreams and my visions. And sometimes what's challenging is actually finding how both those two dreams and visions can actually come together and work together in unity. And it doesn't mean that you neglect what you are meant to do, or what you're called to do, or the thing that you're passionate about. Because what we found out is that we spent so much time, and he spent so much time trying to get me on board. James is going to do my business, James is going to come on board with my business, that I actually neglected what made me happy, the things that I was passionate about. And we have to be very mindful of doing that. But there can be ways where you guys can still come together, work on joint projects together, do things together where you are working together as a team. But then you're still a team, because when he has an idea about something, I'm encouraging him, or vice versa. When he's got an idea, because I'm his sounding board, he's telling me about, he's getting me on board on his business. He doesn't realize I was the CEO the whole time, because he would always come to me and ask me my opinion about something. Jay, should I do this? Should I do that? What do you think about this? I was the one that was making the decisions in the first place. So, I've always been on board, but I was on board in a different way. And sometimes we have to think about, how do we want our partner on board? Because one of the things that we had a conversation about, didn't we, a while back, is that I thought I was being supportive. To him, he felt I wasn't being supportive. And what we realized, and then there was a time when I felt that he was not being supportive, and then vice versa, and all that sort of stuff. And what we had to actually sit down and have a discussion about was, I want to be supportive. Jay, this is how I want to be supportive. Like, this is how you can support me. This is how I feel supported. And it's about understanding if you both can manage what that person wants, and if you identify the expectations, it's easily met.
I think it's absolutely correct, and I think that's key. It's very important to know when you're in a relationship that you don't know what the other person is thinking.
We're not mind readers.
I've seen marriages break up because I've seen people come in a relationship and say, he should already know. She should already know what I'm thinking. It's been 5 years we're married. Why don't they know? You should know that I want this to be done. You should know. No. You could have stopped the divorce just by communicating something.
Yeah.
You could have stopped there being an argument just by communicating. because you don't know the 1,001 things that the person is going through in their mind. I give you a quick example. Somebody, there was a story of somebody that was driving, and the person in front of them was literally stopped, and traffic was there, and they're beeping the horn, and you know how people get a bit of road rage and everything to that degree. And as they are there, they're getting upset. They got out the car and about to smash in the window, only to look in and find that the person in front of them, the reason why they stopped the car was because they were having a seizure. And I said that to say this, that we've got to be careful of what we are assuming somebody should know when we don't know what's going on inside, even the person you're married with, even the person that you've been with for years. We don't know what's going on in their mind. We don't know what they're thinking about. We don't know what's happening. It's about understanding and being compassionate enough to even ask, is everything okay?
Yeah.
Why you didn't remember
Exactly.
to accomplish this?
Sometimes, can I jump in there, babe? Sometimes we are really judgmental to our spouse, and we don't really show as much compassion to our spouse as we do to other people.
Yeah, that's good.
We're actually more patient when we deal with others than what we deal with our spouse.
You're right.
For example, you know, there was times that I would, if I wasn't, okay, for example, for me, people would say, my face tells a million stories, and sometimes people would really, they don't understand me, or they would misinterpret my body language as though it's probably been, as though I'm not happy about something. But what they don't realize is that I'm thinking about 1,000,001 things in my head, and I'm not thinking about anything to do with you. I'm thinking about something completely different. But we take things so personal sometimes, and we take people's actions so personal. And you know, there's friends that are, you know, they'll probably call me and I haven't picked up, and they don't realize that I'm really busy. But unless you communicate that to your friends, they're not going to know, and vice versa. And you can't take it personal. Oh, you don't want to talk to me, blah blah blah. No, maybe they've just got a lot on their mind, or maybe they're probably in a place where they don't want to pick up the phone. I had a really good friend who unfortunately lost a baby, and she just didn't want to talk, and I wanted to talk to her and be there for her and speak to her on the phone, but she was like, Jay, I just don't want to talk right now. And you have to respect that and not take that personal.
I think that's absolutely correct. I've learned to love on my wife at every level. In seasons that I believe she's wrong, I'd love to love her. In moments where I thought that she was right, I would love to learn her. I've learned to not be reactive and explosive, as she's learned the same thing throughout our years of marriage.
But you've never really been like that.
But I've never really been like that. But I've still learned to be even. Let me tell you something. When you would never know patience until you get into marriage. You never knew how patient you were.
Yeah.
Until you get married. You never knew how you have the ability to accomplish great self-control until you get married, because marriage is a revealer of the things that you did not fix when you were single.
Yes. But then sometimes you don't realize that some things are an issue. So I remember one of the heated debates that we had, I turned around and I said to him, I wasn't like this until I married you.
I remember I said that.
Did you remember me saying that? Like, I was not like this. I had no anger problems. I didn't get angry, or I didn't have any issues like that until I married him. He brought it all out of me.
Not to realize it was already there.
It was already in there, because there was some unresolved things that I had not resolved growing up, and there was a lot of anger that I'd suppressed, and you know, obviously we let it out on the ones who are the closest to us. Yeah. So I realized that the anger was always there, Jay. It's just God, you know, you've been placed now in a situation that would allow it to come out, because situations around us test what we are made of.
That's
test what's inside of us, and what's inside of us during that particular time will come out. I leave this with you. I had a beautiful lady who was my pastor growing up as a child, and she was strict. Anybody who grew up in our church together, she was strict. And because she was so strict, sometimes when you see somebody who's strict, you don't really understand their heart, or you may seem as though, or you may look at them as though they don't care, or they don't like you, or they're just strict and they're mean. Mean. That was one of the things I thought about her at one point, was that she's mean. And she later on, she left and she went abroad to live with her husband, and in her later years of life she developed I think it was Alzheimer's or dementia. And I think it was Alzheimer's, and she just didn't remember anybody. Now, she's known me from when I was a baby. She dedicated me, she christened me, she was there through every key points in my life. She was just there, and she didn't recognize me, and I was so upset that she didn't recognize me. But that's part of the disease, and it's unfortunate. And anybody who has a relative or knows somebody, it's such a debilitating disease, and it's so upsetting to know that somebody who once knew you doesn't recognize you anymore. Anyway, when I met her and I saw her and I said, "Hi, do you remember me?" And, I gave her a hug, and she's like, "God is good." She says, "Do you know the Lord?" And, sorry, I'm hearing noises. I don't know what's going to come out of the bushes. I'm scared. Sorry, Ryan.
You're hilarious.
I was about to jump up and go,
We got a bit of a forest behind
even though
us.
there's a fence. No, it's beautiful.
It's a beautiful forest, but
honestly, it's so beautiful. Like, the things you see and the wildlife is just beautiful. That's why I like this cage. But it doesn't matter. I could just hear something ruffling here, and this is Florida. It's still got snakes and all sorts. But anyway, she didn't recognize me, and the one thing she kept saying to me and everybody else around us was, "Do you love the Lord? Do you take him to be your personal savior?" And she was witnessing to us, and it's amazing, because the reason why I'm telling you this is that her true heart came out. Because one of the things I really believe, that you have to be very careful, because many people hide things in their heart, and they come out in other ways. And what we have to do and realize is that we need to deal with these things straight away, because the Holy Spirit and God will start to expose them. They will come out in different scenarios, different examples, or different pressure points in your life, and they will start to expose themselves. So what you need to do, and what I will definitely encourage you all to do, and this is what I learned from this conversation with her, is that you need to ask the Holy Spirit to search your heart. God, search out the matters that are an issue in my heart. Holy Spirit, deal with me, so that I am not a hindrance to my family, I'm not a hindrance to my children, I'm not a hindrance to my spouse. Because we look at other people, our spouses or our children, and we put the blame on them as though they are the problem, when the whole thing is that we are actually the problem ourselves. We are the ones who have the issues. We are the ones who have got unresolved problems, and we look to blame shift and to blame everybody else around us because we're dealing with our own insecurities. So today is really about encouraging you all to evaluate your marriage, evaluate the way you speak to your spouse, evaluate the way you communicate. And I always share this with everybody. I'm going to share this with you. If you're in a relationship and you're dating, please, God will show you signs about your spouse. Don't ignore the signs. Don't be so fooled to the point where you ignore the signs of what this person is trying to show you, because really they're trying to show you a snapshot of how they're going to be. And I would warn anybody, do not, it doesn't matter how desperate you are, doesn't matter how much you want to get married or how much you think your biological clock is ticking, don't get into a relationship because of that. When you see these signs, let's deal with these issues first before we get into marriage. Because the problem that I find, especially when we counsel people and support people on this journey, is that many people want to change their spouse when they're married. And you'll find it very, very hard. You cannot change your spouse when they're married. You cannot think, okay, well, we'll deal with this when we're married. And, it's not an issue now. We'll do it later. Because what you've got to realize is that when you're dating somebody, they only show you the best version of them. They're not going to show you the worst version. They're not going to show you the horror stories. They're going to show you the lovey-dovey, the romance, all the great things. But what you've got to realize, over a period of time, human behavior, we can only keep up an act for so long. And when there's somebody who's not genuine, or someone who has issues, you will start to see some of the issues start to sneak preview into this journey or into this movie of life, and you have to address them there and then, or you have to actually get that person to deal with that problem there and then, because it's harder to deal with it when you're actually married. To be honest with you, all the things that I saw about Ryan, I saw before, and I had to ask myself, Jay, are you ready to deal with those? Are you willing to deal with those? And vice versa with him, with me. And to be honest with you, they weren't that bad. There weren't no really bad issues. They were like basic little things. And we changed over time, didn't we? We've grown together. Because we were married young, so we've grown together. And we've learned a lot about each other. We've learned a lot about life, and we understand each other. We can literally verbally communicate a whole story without even talking to each other, because we understand each other, and that takes time. And I'm really looking forward to see what things are going to be like in years to come, when in the next 10, 15, 20, 30 years. It's going to be very interesting.
Guys, it's great to have you on.
Yeah, it's been amazing.
Today.
Thank you.
Thank you for your time. Thank you for coming on. Look here, I want to pray for you. If you're in a relationship right now, I believe God can do anything. I don't know what it's been. I don't know if there's been areas where you felt as though you've been right and they've been wrong, or they've been wrong and you've been right. Whatever the case may be, there's nothing too hard for God. So look here, let me pray with you quickly. And let's just believe together. Father, in the name of Jesus, we thank you, we love you, we honor you, we adore you. Father God, I thank you for every married couple, Lord, every individual that's even thinking about a relationship, that's listening right now, Father. I'm asking you, Lord, as they listen to these things, these tools, these moments of experience that myself and my wife have gone through, Lord, we don't profess perfection, but we do profess Christ.
Yes,
and we're just asking you to have your way for their life now. Allow them to do the right thing. Allow them to move in a new direction, Lord, that is fitting to you and where you are absolutely pleased. Have your way with their life now.
Lord.
We love you. We thank you. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen and amen.
Before we go, I just want to quickly share this. So before we got on air, Ryan has a particular way where if you go to a hotel, he wants to sleep on the same side of the bed. He ain't budging. Anywhere we go, he wants to sleep on the same side. If we sit down in a chair, he wants to sit on the same side. So technically, if you look at some of our previous videos, Ryan's sitting where I'm sitting now, and I'm sitting there, and I realised that sitting here isn't really the greatest position, because I feel like I'm exposed to the elements. See,
I tried to
babe,
protect
I've been humble.
So what I did, I just said, okay.
Yeah, he's like, he got up
there.
and he's like, go on, babe, you sit there. And I was like, oh, because he doesn't know.
Sometimes you just got to give them what they want to, and just let everything else flow.
He doesn't normally do that. So, babe, you were right. Next week, you can have your seat back.
Oh, wow. Hey, we're both right. God bless you. Love you guys.
God bless you guys.
Speak to you soon.
Take care.
Bye-bye.